We're competing at Battlin BBQ in Ingleside, Texas, and today's video is all about competition ribs and pork. So when it comes to trimming my money muscles, I've told you guys before I like to be really meticulous with the way that I'm injecting here. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm not injecting too far into those fat seams because we can get big time separation on these money muscles, which I do not want if I don't have to. Obviously it happens, you know, I'm not perfect, I'm not the perfect injector or anything like that, but I am trying to keep this nice and uniform and not really have to retrim too much. But I'm not afraid to retrim any of my pork. If I need to retrim it now, I will. If I need to retrim it tomorrow before I wrap it, I'll also do that. You guys have seen me do that, but my goal is most definitely to keep this as uniform as possible and to only inject directly into the muscles. So you'll see here, I'll try and massage it out a little bit, but I want all of my money muscles to be pretty uniform in shape. Now obviously they're not exactly the same, but they're good enough for me to get some really good slices from these money muscles, so we could put them in the box and hopefully get a nice uniform looking box. I'm one of those people that I really think that the trim is very important, especially when it comes to pork. Well, really when it comes to anything, I think that the trimming process is really important. So I'm trying my best to keep these uniform in my trim when I'm injecting and all throughout the cook. And for the full pork butt, this is really simple. I'm just basically going to town on this bad boy. I'll probably put about 4 or so tubes into here. Nothing too crazy, get you a good injection. I'm using LC's Boss Hog this weekend. We'll hit this money muscle. I didn't over trim it. Yeah, there's some fat. I'll pull that tomorrow, no biggie. Really where I focus is right here under this fat cap. That's where the bacon is. And that's where you're gonna get a lot of flavor from if you decide to use the pulled. Now my goal is actually to not use this pulled this weekend. I don't really like to put it in my head or put it out there necessarily, but I will say that last time we used the pulled, and I personally think it was not the best idea. Not that the pulled was not good, but I definitely think that we gave them too many options and it really ended up, I don't want to say hurting us, but we could have had a higher placing on pork. I thought our pork was really good the last time that we competed in Aransas Pass. So I'm going to try my best to do really good on these money muscles and only use the money muscles with the pulled under for some added heat. Alright, and that's all there is to it on the pork. The full butt is always really simple. Just inject away, get some nice flavor in there. We're also going to re-season tomorrow after we shred it because, of course, there is some injection on the inside, but we're really only seasoning the outside. And speaking of seasoning, with our pork, we go over top with that base on the monies and on the full butt. And we're going to go over top with Southern Belle as well. We've been really liking this combo for our pork the night before. We don't do this with our ribs. We are doing this with our pork though. Next up, we're injecting our ribs. I personally like to use 3 racks at every single competition, and we use the same exact injection for pork and for ribs. When injecting ribs, I like to start with this top portion of the meat that runs all the way across the rack. Then I start to pump in between each individual rib from the top and the back side. This is commonly known as hot dogging. The meat in between each bone plumps up and looks like a hot dog. I don't typically have an exact number of pumps or tubes that I use for every single rack of ribs because they're all different. What I'm trying to do is make sure that every single rack looks nice and plump and it can take the injection. Forgot to take the membrane off of one of them. And I think it was, who was it that said that there's no way that I can do this in one shot? Was it Zach?
Maybe.
Yeah, there you go, Zach. These are pretty crooked. I ain't gonna sit here and lie to you, but we'll cut right through these bones tomorrow. As long as we get them nice and tender, it's not very hard to do. So we'll show you that tomorrow, but I know that they're definitely pretty crooked, which in a perfect world, I will not have crooked ribs, but it ain't a perfect world, and it's all good. So now, that base on the back of the ribs, Flip it over. It's gonna swim in this juice overnight. And that's it. We'll cook these in the morning. Now that ribs and pork are fully injected, we'll put them in the Cambro with ice until the morning. It's 6 a.m. and it's time to season our ribs. We already seasoned with that base last night, so now we're going to finish layering up our seasonings. Southern Belle can be a little too coarse for our liking when it comes to competition, so we prefer to pulse it 3 to 4 times in a coffee grinder. Next up, we're going to go over top with Trifecta. This is going to be a heavier layer than Southern Belle, and this is what's going to give us that beautiful red color on our ribs. I personally like a nice pepper pop when it comes to ribs, so I'm going to go over top with a light layer of 16 mesh black pepper. For our pork, we already seasoned with that base in Southern Belle the night before, so now we're going over top with Trifecta. As I mentioned last night, I'm not afraid to retrim these monies at any point throughout the competition. So here I'm trimming a little bit more to get the shape I want on this money muscle, and then I'm re-seasoning it before I put it on the pit. It's 7 a.m. and all 3 racks of ribs as well as the pork butt are going onto the Outlaw, which is running around 300 degrees. "30 minutes later, we're going to throw our monies on as well. What we're looking for on all of our proteins is to get the perfect red color and a little smoke before it's time to wrap. We're back at it wrapping ribs, and nothing has changed here. I got some butter. I'm going to put the ribs right over top of the butter. See if there's any ugly stuff I want to get out of here. Right now it's 8:17, so ribs haven't been on for too long, but I do prefer to get these off exactly when I want the color. Exactly when the color is the way I want it. So I'm cool with pulling these early. You can see everything is nice and stuck to the rib. We don't have anything to worry about there. I'm just pushing these bones back a little bit. I'm pushing the meat back a little bit so I can try and expose these bones and get some really nice pullback. You do want to be careful. You don't want to rip anything. I've done it before. It'll still work out, but if you don't have to, try not to rip anything. You can even push up on the meat, like right on the bone. So here in just a second, you'll see that already, just from me doing that, the bones are a lot more exposed. So I feel like I'm going to get a pretty good looking rib here once we're completely done. So we have the 2 sticks of butter on the bottom. Now what I'll do is I'll go over top with sugar in the raw. Not too much. Make a little moat, whatever it's called. And then we're going to go over top with some Killer Hogs vinegar. And what I'm going to do today, just because I feel like being different, I'm going to get a basting brush, actually. And I'm actually going to lightly tap this in, so it's part of the actual rib. So this is something I literally am just randomly doing right now. So I'm going to add a little bit more sauce. I don't want to go too crazy with it. And I'm just going to tap it in. Tap it in. Tap, tap, tap-a-roo. What movie? I'm so glad you knew that. Because if you didn't, I'd probably be pretty mad at you. Alright, so just tapping it in. Again, this is just something I'm doing on the fly. I do this a lot. Unfortunately, I do this a lot. But we'll remember and we'll write this down that we did this just in case. But what I like here is, just in case I get anything from this sauce where it darkens up just a tad, I'm not going to have actual lines of it. And that's just something that I thought of literally in my head, right? So now you can still see The seasoning is on there nice and good. No issues with it at all. So what I'm going to start doing, if this works out well, is painting this sauce in a little bit. Right now you can see that there's hardly any sauce at all. I had a full bottle and I've hardly used any. So we're going to go ahead and start the wrap process. And this is just something I like to do because I don't like to lose any of this good moisture we're about to put inside. And I fold it up as if I'm about to wrap this fully up. And then I'll come back with my liquid. This is 2/3 of a cup of my liquid wrap. So this has a little bit of chicken broth. Some butter obviously is in there. Play with it. And that's all there is to it on the ribs. We're going to wrap every single rack like this and we'll put them back onto the Outlaw. Alright, so now we've got the money mussels in a pan. Sauce on the butter. Always. I don't know why. Do the same thing that I did with my ribs. Kind of tap this sauce in a little bit. And then I got a cup of the good stuff. Almost forgot. Pork's basically going to be the same exact thing. Little sugar, little sauce, and a cup of the good stuff. It's 10:30 and we want to check our ribs one more time just to see where they're at. We're about to get into the thick of it with chicken, so we want to just see if these are close to being done. So, oh, they smell good today, I'll tell you that much. Nope, they're not quite where I want them. They feel good, but I think they can be just a little bit softer. So we're gonna go 30 more minutes and we'll check these again. We do want these really soft and really tender. Obviously, we do not want these to be mushy, but we're not to that point yet. So we have plenty more that we can push. So we're gonna keep going. Like I said, right now it's 10:30. We'll check it again at 11. It's 10:47 and the money mussels are done. You can see that we had one right here that unfortunately doesn't look very good. I'll see if I can fix that inside, but this is feeling really good and so is this. So I know we're gonna at least have 2 good rows of monies and we'll see what we can do with the third one. But let's go ahead and take this inside. We've got to drain this au jus and then we want to wrap this back up for the Cambro. So this was my one money mussel that kind of blew up on me. You can see here it's looking a little funky, but if I kind of maneuver this a little bit, I can get it to stand up and probably look pretty okay. So I'm going to see if I can't trim this out a little bit. So actually feels really nice and tender. Taste it. Great flavor. So if I can, I definitely want to save this for sure. Oh, that's really good. This is really good. That might be some of the best pork we've cooked in a little bit. And I think we've been cooking some pretty good pork. So we'll see what happens. But what I'm going to do here is take my shears, lightly go around just to round it off a little bit here. And I told you guys yesterday, well, same video, but I told you guys yesterday, I'm not afraid to do this. And I don't think you guys should be either, because realistically, as long as this turns out good in the end, doesn't really matter how you got there. So I can kind of turn this money mussel this way and I can get my slices and we can try and keep them together. So this truly does taste very, very good. So I'm actually trying to save this. What I'm going to do is these bald spots. These bald spots, I'm going to re-hit them with some trifecta. And we're just going to wrap this up and let this rest. If it doesn't set all the way, that's completely fine. But yeah, so far I'm actually really happy with that pork. So now my monies are going to go into this pan. So they are a little bit missized, and that's okay with me, but they definitely are if you guys can see it in the camera. We'll figure that out in the end if we need to. We can do some more trimming again in the end, but if I don't have to, I definitely don't want to trim, right? But we're going to go ahead and go over top. I hit some of my seasoning off there. No biggie. Little moss. Trifecta. Sauce over top. Smells good. I think it's gonna be good, Papa. So the thing about the money mussels, in my opinion, is yes, the seasoning and everything on the outside is important, but it's such a small layer of flavor when it comes to the actual money mussel itself. You're gonna get a lot of that flavor when you actually paint some sauce over the front of the slice or the back of the slice, your au jus, and then your dust. So I'm not too worried about losing my bark on top, if that makes any sense, because when I make a medallion slice, it's like this. So I have a little tiny bit of that seasoning all the way around, but it doesn't upset me if I lose a little bit right here. We can fix all of that. So that's the one thing that I've learned a lot when doing these competitions, is that if you get frustrated in the middle of it, you're 100% just making it harder on yourself. Know that you can fix it in the end. It's completely fine, and I do think that all of these are going to turn out really good, and they're going to have plenty of flavor, and we're going to finish them with the dust in the end. So don't worry about any of that. It's around 11 a.m. and our ribs are finally done. Things you really want to look for are the pull back along the bones, and the probe should go in and out with absolute ease. I don't like to rely solely on temperatures, but for a guideline, the ribs usually go past 210 degrees. Just like our pork, we're going to remove the au jus from each rack of ribs, strain it, and coat each rack with it, followed by a ladle full of sauce. Then we'll let them sit in the Cambro until we're ready to slice. It's 12:15 p.m. and now it's time to start slicing our ribs. I like to turn my ribs over and look at the backside just so I can see the bones. It really helps to find a good knife for this, because if these bones are crooked, all I have to do is slice through the bones to get a straight looking rib. If they're cooked enough, it should be easy to slice all the way through. Once all the ribs are sliced, they get dunked with more sauce. These will sit in the pit to let the sauce set for around 5 to 7 minutes. I like to make sure to remove any pieces of the bone that could fall off in the box. You do not want to get DQ'd for something this simple. One of the most important parts of this process, in my opinion, is to taste each rack of ribs. We like to rank each rib from least to most favorite so we know which racks to put in the box. All right, so these on top. So now we're processing our pork. You guys have seen us do this before, but we'll go into a little bit of detail right now. So basically what I'm doing is, this is actually a tube here. This is what you can get some really good pulled meat out of. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting all of my pulled that I think I might want to put in the box. And I'm just separating it a little bit. Like I told you guys earlier in the video, I don't want to say I'm trying not to, but I definitely want to focus on the monies. That's just something personally I really want to do and I really want to make sure of. So basically, again, here's some more of that good looking meat. And the thing is, like, you look at this right now, right? It doesn't have much of a bark on it at all. And there's obviously no seasoning on the inside. So yes, we did inject this. That's for sure. But it's going to still lack flavor compared to something that has built up a real crusty bark and stuff like that. So we're just trying to process this and get the best possible pieces that we can, just to make sure if we do end up turning this in, we'll see what happens. So actually, before I do anything else, I'm going to flip this over real quick. Take off this fat. This fat right here is what has the bacon on it. So there's a lot of fat in this, which is fine by me. Kind of protects that bacon back here. So basically what I like to do, just in case, because here's the thing, even if you try and use this as heat, if it's in the box, they can eat it. They can eat it for sure. So I do want to make sure I'm putting the best pieces in there, and I'm wanting to make sure that it tastes really, really good. So real fast. So we got our bacon here. And like I said, take all this fat off. So this is literally pieces of bacon. So I'm just getting both sides. Another thing I don't want is too many of these hard pieces. It is bark, but I want it to be a really, really smooth and buttery bite for these guys. So bacon will go here, and we'll turn it one way just so we know what we're working with. So I always like to try and make sure I understand what I'm working with, because I know that's the bacon. I want it to be on top of my pulled, because that is going to be the better bite of pulled that I can actually put in that box. So let's go here. Here's some more bacon. I'm going to try and keep it kind of together and larger pieces, so that way it would look really, really good in the box if we decide to throw it down the middle. So this part is pretty meticulous, and it takes some time. It's 1:19 right now, and I'm already doing this. You might be thinking that's a little bit early, but what we can do is we can wrap this pork up in some foil, and we can make sure that after that, we will put it into the box later. So we'll keep it in foil, and then basically what we'll do is we'll throw it on the smoker and have it really, really, really hot. So right before it's time to turn in, we'll take it out, and we just have really, really nice, good pieces of hot pork. And that's always one of the biggest advantages that you can have. If you can turn in really hot food, I think you have a much better chance at placing really high. So a load of really, really good bacon right there. I ain't gonna lie to you, if the rest of the pork tastes good, just because we have so much bacon, it might be worth throwing that down the middle. I don't know what you think.
That's the most bacon we've had.
Yeah, that's probably the most bacon we've ever gotten from a butt. So that might be worth throwing down the middle, to be honest. Which I know I said I didn't want to do it. This is a lot of pulled today. A lot of really good pieces of pulled too. I like the shape that it's not so mush, you know? Alright, so it's 1:26. We wanted to start cutting our pork so we could see if we need to manipulate the shape of anything here. So first things first, we're going to drop a piece on the ground. We're going to taste it. Really good pork here. On to the second one. So that looks good. It does look different than this one though, I'll tell you that much. Least favorite, second favorite, most favorite, right? We're putting pulled in. I lied to you guys. Can I get the bench scraper? Please, and thank you. I lied to you guys, but it's good, and we're gonna try it. Screw it. Now that all of our boxes are turned in, it's time to see what the judges thought.
All right, fourth place, ribs.
Okay.